Welcome to the Mayo Clinic Human Optimization Project, where we're creating the blueprint to help you become the best human you can be so you can give your gifts back to the world. I'm your guide and fellow optimizer, Christopher Camp. Conflict is a universal experience. Anywhere two people are present, conflict is likely to occur at some level. This conflict can be devastatingly harmful, but it can also foster growth and progress. Accordingly, the title of our session today is Managing Conflict, Sorting Facts and Feelings to Turn Disputes into Progress. Our expert guest is Dr. Erica Martin. Erica is the Talent Development Program Director for the Department of Development at Mayo Clinic. She's an experienced leader specializing in coaching, leadership development, and cultivating innovative, growth-focused cultures. She empowers leaders and teams through strength-based approaches, emphasizing curiosity, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, and performance management. Erica holds a PhD in conflict analysis and resolution, a Master of Public Administration, and a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. She's certified as a Senior Human Resources Professional by HRCI, a Prosky Change Management Practitioner, and a Hogan Leadership Forecast Series Administrator. Committed to lifelong learning, Erica is currently pursuing ICF accreditation in executive coaching and actively promotes personal growth and well-being. Well, Erica, thank you so much for joining us on the Human Optimization Project today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So to stay organized, we're going to break our discussion up into 3 sections. And I have one big question that's sort of the theme of each of those sections. So our first section and our first big question is, what is conflict and what is its impact? The second one is going to be, why do we find ourselves in conflict so often and why is this hard for us? And then the last section, we'll talk about some solutions. And my big question there is, what can we do to turn conflict into progress at work and in our everyday relationships? So that's the agenda. Does that work for you?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Let's dive into that first section. So we're going to talk a little bit about what conflict is and what its impact is on us. So I like to start with just some general definitions. So I'd like to hear from you as an expert. How do you define conflict in practical terms?
In practical terms, conflict essentially is when you have two or more parties who have gathered together and you have misalignment of basic needs, of values, of goals. And there could be so many different factors that contribute to it. For me personally, based off my research, if nothing else, when you have misalignment of needs, if one party feels the other party is not meeting their needs or they're taking needs away from them, whether that's a tangible item or a feeling, that's typically when you start to see conflict bubble up.
And there are different types of conflict, and you can have conflict over different subjects or different materials. Can you take us through like some of the most common broad categories of conflict that people have to navigate?
Absolutely. So we can start with the big ones, right? Communication. So sometimes it boils down to communication style. And when you have one party who feels the communication style of another party is rooted in disrespect or they feel threatened and not necessarily physical, it could be psychologically, you tend to see conflicts start to bubble up. Of course, you have the classic big conflicts that we see at the high level that generates war and things of that nature with basic needs, religion, spiritual beliefs. And for some, that quite honestly is a basic need of theirs. And so that is something that when there's incompatibility, you're going to see conflict. A lot of times in workplace settings, you have so many people's worldviews that they have brought with them to work or their past childhood trauma, whatever. You see a lot of that bubble up in terms of conflict because whether it's the communication style, the needs being met or not being met, just that incompatibility without it being resolved, a lot of times, again, that's when you see the conflict show up. So relationships, I like to say anytime you have two or more people gathered, so whether it's family, coworkers, even complete strangers. I mean, how many times have we watched videos of people fighting at theme parks, for example? It's rooted in conflict, and we know that that's just what we see at the surface level, and a lot of times there's so much more that's beneath the surface on both parties' ends.
Mhm. I've often summarized it too. I think that the two like big buckets of problems that I see for conflict is either comes down to a lack of perspective of yourself or the other person, or a lack of communication in one way or another too. So I think a lot of it, I mean, that's a huge oversimplification, but usually there's some element of those two things in buried in the conflict somewhere. And I think it's interesting too. You talk about it. It can happen. I mean, it ranges all the way from countries at war with one another to two people fighting over their place in line for a roller coaster, and so it does. It runs the full spectrum and the full gamut. And I think that even though some of these are massive, some of these are small, there are some similarities and differences that are interwoven between really all of our conflicts. So I'd like to chat a little bit about conflict in different settings. So, what are some of the common differences and similarities between workplace conflict and conflict in our personal lives?
I love this question because I feel like sometimes I hear people say, well, Erica, the version that you see of me at work is not the version that you see at home. And while I think there is something to that, that's typically not the case when our fight or flight is activated. You tend to see those derailers in your personality bubble up, whether you're at work or at home. So, starting with the similarities, I would say we all have different triggers. I have a PhD in conflict resolution, and I still have arguments with my spouse, and I still have differences of opinions with coworkers. And so I like to share that with people because there is no peak at the top of the mountain of your emotional intelligence. And so I say that because whether you're at work or at home, when you feel that activation happen, and we can talk about this, I can unpack this a little bit more, but essentially, your activation triggers. So what makes you go into that or flight or fawn mode? That can happen because of something someone says, how they say it, your perception, as you mentioned earlier. And so that I would say those are the similarities. Now, the difference is your awareness, which I think is so key when it comes to managing conflict. You are more likely to be aware of the stakes of what will happen if you don't manage your activations at work than you might be at home. And part of that is because of the psychological safety. You are able to take the mask off at home a bit more than you are typically at work. The stakes are higher because your job is tied to your basic needs. And so if you have a disagreement with your supervisor, typically speaking, you're not going to say the things that you would say to them in the way that you would say to perhaps a loved one that lives at your home with you. And so I think it's a fine line though, because I feel like so many people may have a story perhaps early on in their career or during a season of their life where maybe they were working on a project that was more stressful. There's something that usually is contributing to it where they did lose their cool at work, probably more so than they would have liked. And vice versa at home. But that shame and things like that typically is tied more so to work just because that version that you have tried to present of yourself, you can only hold it for so long once that activation comes into play.
Mm. I like how you said that version of yourself that you try to present at work, and I agree. I think we really are like we are who we are at our core, but that probably comes out a little different at home versus work for all the reasons that you just mentioned. And as you were talking through that, you mentioned the concept of psychological safety, and hopefully most of us feel a strong sense of psychological safety at home and at work. Ideally, you want that in both. Sometimes we tend to have more of that at home than we do at work, which is it's great to have a high sense of psychological safety. One of the downsides of that, though, is that that person at home loves you and cares about you and is not leaving and is there. But you can abuse that because sometimes you say, "Well, I'm gonna push harder on this individual because I know they're not gonna fire me, right? They're stuck with me." So you have to be careful not to use that psychological safety as a weapon against those people who care about you and love about you. They're the ones that are going to be there with you till the end. So you got to be kind to them and you got to take care of them. And so I think that it's important to call out that conflict resolution is important not only at work but also at home because you need to take care of folks in both of those places.
I love that. And we can certainly unpack this some more, but this is why I highly recommend in my group coaching at work, and I also think it's important at home that you establish guiding principles before the conflict starts so that you can have that alignment and have that accountability because it is so easy for us to get comfortable and, to your point, take advantage. And then you wonder and you're caught off guard when there is a blow up because in your mind it's a blue sky day, but for the other person, they may have been feeling the behavior and the impact of your behavior, but not feeling comfortable to speak up.
Yeah. So when we get into our third section, we start talking about some solutions. We should probably specify, like, hey, these techniques may be are more important at home. These may be more important at work. So we've all experienced conflict to some extent, and we all recognize, most of us at least feel, oh, it's kind of uncomfortable. It's kind of awkward. I don't really like it. I don't enjoy it. So we are aware of those negative consequences on how it makes us feel. But what are some other negative consequences of unresolved conflict?
There are so many, and this is where I wish people could understand that the more you address conflict in a respectful, assertive way, the easier it becomes. And so over time, when you continue to live in unresolved conflict, it does weigh a toll on your perspective on in terms of how you foster relationships, because now you've built up such a wall in terms of your communication style that quite honestly, you really are missing out on some opportunities to enhance the way you communicate with others, whether it's your leaders, stakeholders, direct reports at home, your partner, your children, whatever that is, you're really missing out on a professional development opportunity to enhance your communication skills by way of conflict. Of course, weighing on you over time, it's just not sustainable. And more times than not, we do tend to see that eventually come out of a person. And it could manifest whether it's physical. So, for example, over time, and I'm not a medical doctor, but understanding the connection between stress and your body, there is research that shows that there's a strong connection there, and also your confidence level and your ability when you do go and encounter a similar situation in the future, your confidence is not going to be where it should be had you faced that conflict before head on and learn from it. And truly suspending the notion of perfection. There is no perfect way to address conflict. It is intended to be awkward because we are vulnerable and we're putting ourselves in a position where we're having to be a bit more transparent than for some of us, especially at work, would like to be. However, on the other side of that is an opportunity for you to learn more about the other party, for you to quite honestly learn more about yourself, and to truly strengthen that unused muscle so that the next time you encounter conflict, because it will happen again, you have that muscle ready for that opportunity and that you can continue to grow. It is continue to be a part of your lifelong progress as a human being.
Mhm. That's a tremendous list, and you hit a lot of high points, and you actually talked about a lot of the other concepts that we talk about here on the Human Optimization Project. And like some of the things I'm hearing there, is decreased health and lower confidence and lower performance, less joy, which leads to more burnout. And so all these are universal problems that we're all struggling with, some of which may be rooted in some unresolved conflict that we haven't sorted through. As we've been defining conflict in this section, we've talked about what it is, we've talked about its impact. We've mostly focused on the negative of unresolved conflict. But I want to ask, is there a time when conflict is helpful or productive?
I love this question because I love in my executive coaching sessions to encourage leaders to seek diverse thought and to seek different opinions. Because quite honestly, if you're not experiencing any conflict with your team members, whether you're in a leadership role or with your peers, sometimes that could be a sign that the passion has left the building or that people are just showing up. They're in autopilot mode. You want to encourage safe spaces for people to feel comfortable to share that they do have a different opinion or whatever that may be. And so where I would say conflict is positive and productive is in spaces with your team, especially if you're trying to manage a complex problem. It is going to require different brainstorming ideas and solutions and different perspectives. You may have a person who is looking at it from the viewpoint of data and driving their decision based off of data. You may have someone else on the team who understands that, but their priority is the appearance of the product and how that may look. And two things can be true at the same time, that we need it to be sound and the integrity be there in terms of data, but the output also needs to be in alignment with brand and our excellence standards. And so how might you enter a conversation with respect, with the guiding principles that I mentioned earlier, and the understanding that we all have a common goal here? You're going to end up with a product that has elements of both parties and their priorities, but quite honestly, you're going to have even more so a really a closer team because they
Mm.
were able to share their opinion. They didn't feel like the other party shut them down, and they felt like they had a voice. I think that is so critical in the workspace. And at home, it's quite honestly the same thing. When you have, I have two children, so I have a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old. And last night, my 4-year-old started gymnastics for the first time. It was a bit of a disaster. However, she didn't want to listen. She was running around. The poor coach was just chasing her. It was a whole thing. And my husband and I were talking about it, and his perspective was, did we put her in too soon? Is she not ready? She just turned 4. Perhaps we need to wait another year. I was of the mindset that I'm pretty sure the coach has encountered this before. Let's not dash our dreams of her getting Olympic gold because she didn't listen this first time. And we did have some back and forth about it. We ended though with an agreement that we would continue at least for the duration of, I think, the 6-month program, and then we would revisit if this is a good
Mm.
fit for our daughter.
Mhm.
I would not have been able to have that conversation with my husband if I didn't feel psychologically safe. And I love that I could share. I didn't agree with him in that moment about pulling her, and I didn't agree with his perspective. But, I felt like because of our guiding principles and our foundation being so strong, we both felt that we could speak up and come to a resolution together.
Mhm, and that's great. I mean, and obviously in that situation, you have alignment on your goals, right? You're wanting what's best for your daughter. You both respect one another. You know each other's hearts, and so then it can be really helpful. And what I'm hearing from you is you need a little bit of friction for growth and progress to occur. And so it's like a lot of things in life, a little bit is good, too much is bad. And conflict, I think, is the same way. So there is value to it when done appropriately and done well. Despite that, though, we struggle with this, I think, more than we master it. So we'll jump into our second section where we're going to talk about why we find ourselves in conflict so often and why it's challenging for us. So let me just start with that. Why is conflict hard for most of us as human beings?
Well, I think it goes to that we are human and we have been conditioned to think about the human experience as almost like a Disney movie where everything is great. You have the birds singing and things like that. And if there is an issue, you rally together and you're done within, the 90 minutes of the movie. And we understand, especially as we get older and with life experiences, that's just not how it works. And this is where understanding that conflict is going to happen. I feel like we a lot of times think of our path through life, whether at work or at home, as conflict being this thing that will never happen, and so we don't prepare for it. As
Mhm.
someone who lives in Florida, we know hurricane season is from June until November, and so we prepare for it starting in April. I would like to see in our society to have, I would like for us to have the same approach when it comes to conflict, that it's going to happen in some season of your life. So how might you prepare for it? And so I feel like it's hard because when you consider it to be a muscle that we could strengthen and we're not, doing the things to condition, it's just going to make it even more difficult when we go into that experience. And then when we go into that experience, we're not prepared, we're not conditioned for the conflict. Guess what's going to happen? It's not going to feel great. You're going to think to yourself, oh, I did a bad thing. And because of our brain trying to protect us, rather than us thinking, oh, how might I prepare for the next encounter? It will be for the sake of protecting us. How might I avoid that so I don't feel that way again? And so we really have to fight against our human nature to understand, even if you encountered an argument or something with someone and you didn't present yourself in the way you wanted to, perhaps you lost your cool, it's okay. Progress over perfection. What you can do is think about that moment, what you can learn from it, and again, use that to condition yourself for the next time you encounter a conflict, whether it's with the same party or with someone else that maybe you know at work, or a complete stranger. All of the elements of the communication, things that we mentioned earlier, are always going to be present when you have those issues related to conflict.
Mm. There's a real imbalance here between our expectation and our reality. You're right. Like we expect the Disney movie life, and but even if you look in the Disney movie, it's a happy ending, but it was only a happy ending because the character went through some sort of conflict somewhere. And so even in those scenarios, we expect a little bit of drama along the way, but in our own lives we don't quite apply those principles because we don't like it. And I think it does something to us, physiologically. Obviously, conflict can often rev up our sympathetic nervous system, increase our heart rate, blood pressure, body temperature, blood flow. We get sweaty, we get hot, and we don't like those things. And I think that puts us on edge. It makes us uncomfortable, and we want to retreat away from that, which I think is really hard. But also sometimes we're in denial that we think that we should just never have to go through that. But I'm wondering, are there certain things in our past or our personal histories that might also contribute to our unhealthy fear of conflict? Like, are there certain things about us that may predispose us to making those false assumptions that life should be perfect and we should never have conflict?
Absolutely. When you think about everyone having a story, everyone has a path to where they are today. More times than not, it came with some sort of interaction that was uncomfortable, and quite honestly, even trauma. And that worldview, while broad at a high level, the more you unpack and think about your particular triggers, a lot of times you can trace it back to a particular experience as far back as your childhood. I mean, when I sit and I reflect on potential conflicts or things that I recognize that trigger me. So for example, I tend to go into people pleasing mode when I have my derailers unmonitored. And I think about times in preschool where I remember the preschool bully, I think, pushed me or something. And as I'm telling you this story, I can feel the same way I felt at 4 years old. As an adult, I still carry that with me, whether consciously or subconsciously. And so sometimes it will come out in our conflict with others. And I think it's so key for us to understand that and give ourselves grace and give the other person grace. Because as we're thinking about our stories and our narratives that we've created in the different chapters, they also have their chapters. And I think that's where the benefit of leaning in with curiosity can a lot of times neutralize some of the stories that we're telling ourselves, because it can be so deep when you go down that rabbit hole and don't pull yourself out of it, and it really can contribute to escalating the conflict, likely beyond that level that you really wanted it to be.
And you said, I like that we should look back at ourselves with curiosity, not with judgment. You said curiosity. And so I think it's important for us to think about like who we are, how we got to where we are, why we are the way we are, what our triggers are, etc. And we should think about why. What is it in my past that has made me this way? And you should do it with a curious mindset, not necessarily a judgmental mindset to think, oh, well, I'm a failure because of X, Y, and Z, or because I have these issues, or because whatever. No, look at it as a scientist and say, all right, this is data, this is information, this is what makes me who I am today, this is why I respond the way I do. And then set your intention for how you're going to behave in the future without necessarily being judgmental about how you have behaved in the past and what got you there. So, speaking of how most of us struggle with this and are uncomfortable, it seems like there are some people out there that love conflict, and we've all run into a few of these folks and these personality types. It's like they just love it. They seek it out. If there isn't any, they create it. Even if it's not necessary, they just seem to enjoy the process of conflict, and sometimes not even for the sake of progress or resolving some pertinent issue. It almost seems like they just enjoy the process of conflict. What's going on with those people?
I love those people. I just went on a cruise with one of those people and I love her, absolutely love her. You're making me think of a story. So we were getting ready to hop into our Uber. We had just gotten off the ship and one of the attendants told us that we needed to move outside and not harbor near the door. And she was just ready to say, well, I don't see a sign. I don't see a policy that says that. And I had to turn to her and say, I hear you and I see you. However, we're going to comply because I don't think this is worth the fight. That's just her nature. What
Yes.
I love about that group, that audience, I call them my bold communicators, is that they like you said, they love going into having a difference of opinions. In fact, they get annoyed if they're with someone who is too agreeable for too long, quite honestly. So what's happening with them is that they see the value in expressing their voice, and how they gather information is hearing the voices of others, and how they gather new information to process is that difference of opinion. And of course, as you said earlier, too much of something can be a bad thing or a potential derailer. And so I do talk to them about how might you consider your approach, and also consider prioritizing when to speak up, and also inviting others to the conversation without it being a confrontation. I think it goes back to balance, but a lot of them, and I think this is a superpower that they have. They can process out loud, they can think out loud. And I do feel like, assuming positive intent, they do want to hear what others have to say. And where I do offer in some of my coaching some things for them to think about and questions for them to ask themselves is, how is this question I'm asking or this statement that I'm making coming across to the other party, and what is the impact of that?
Mm.
Is there a different way that I can phrase this? Can I pause for a moment so that they can process, especially if they're an internal processor? Can I give them that space? And so making those adjustments for my bold communicators can really go a long way, so that they can still keep the essence of their ability to enter conflict eyes wide open, but also leave that space for those who may need a little bit more time to process, and to also ensure that they have a space to share their voice.
Very well said. I've got a really close friend that's this type of person and this type of leader. And one of the things that I've talked to him about is how he has learned to use that strategically and is intentional about it. So he recognizes that that tends to be his approach to problems, but that's not always the approach that's best received by others. But there are times when that's exactly what you need. You need somebody loud, bold, who's willing to blow it up, so we can start all over. And so he's done an amazing job of being able to throttle that up and down depending on the situation. So oftentimes if you recognize, all right, this is low stakes, not a big deal. I'm going to stay calm. We'll minimize conflict. But now it's like, okay, this is coming to a head. This problem needs to be addressed. I'm going to turn up the heat. We're going to get it all out there and we're going to work through it. And it can be a tremendous gift if you can learn to use it intentionally, like anything. Okay, so let's talk about how we can all get better at this. We'll jump into our third section and try to come up with some solutions for folks. So I think, in light of what we just talked about, We're all born with these different levels of conflict propensity and different levels of comfort with conflict. So we're all different at our starting point. But despite that, can we all get better at managing and resolving conflict?
The short answer is yes, absolutely. I think there's such a great opportunity right now for us to dive into what we can do to enhance the way we interact with our peers at work as well as those at home. And my big piece here that I will stand and shout from every hill is that it starts from within. Having that reflection is so key. And so I'll just share this. If you are about to enter a conversation, perhaps a difficult conversation, and this goes for whether you're at home or at work, I highly recommend that you sit for a moment and have that moment of reflection so that you can think about what are my potential triggers as I enter this conversation. And as you mentioned earlier, why might that be a trigger for me? Let me think about that. And if that bubbles up, what can I do to redirect my energy? And the flip of that is, what do I do really well in these moments? So think about previous conflicts where you felt proud of yourself. Perhaps it wasn't perfect, but you felt like you handled yourself and managed communicating with the other person in a way that you felt proud of yourself. What were some elements from those previous interactions that you could bring into this conversation? So having that moment of reflection is so important. So in my mind, I think of it as 3 phases, right? So you have that moment of reflection before the conversation. Once you're in the conversation, that's phase 2. And this is where you wanna just kinda think about how you can continue to lean into that curiosity and ensuring that you're asking the other person follow-up questions. That is a great way to contribute to de-escalation. So in my previous life, I was a suicide intervention trainer for a call center. And one of the things that we taught when we had clients who were in a moment of crisis is this is your moment to listen. And as the suicide intervention specialist, it is your job to ask questions that they can use to reflect upon themselves. And so as you're having even a maybe not a crisis, but having a difficult conversation, asking those questions and really leaning into curiosity will suspend that judgment that we mentioned earlier. And it'll also give you a moment to take a peek into what's beneath the surface of the other party. You know, what is it that they truly need that perhaps you're not seeing? Or if you understand what the need is, how might you align so that you two can come together for a resolution that perhaps you may not have to give something up, which I know we talk about compromise a lot, but perhaps really enter it with collaboration where you both may win something from it. The final phase in my mind when it comes to managing conflict, so you have the reflection, you have the curiosity in the center as you're having that crucial conversation. The last part I think is probably the most overlooked step, and that is that post-conversation self-reflection. Taking that moment to and I would say probably 24 to 48 hours after that conversation to sit with yourself and ask yourself, what did I learn about myself entering that conversation? What did I do well? And what could I do differently next time? Constantly having that check-in with yourself is how you're going to condition and strengthen your muscles for that next conflict that will come in the future season. Or if you want to follow up with that party, perhaps there was a something you missed or you felt like, oh man, as I'm reflecting on this, I may have missed on up on something that I heard or I misinterpreted. It gives you that opportunity to circle back sooner than later. So reflection is key. Taking action is also key, and truly being a champion for yourself by way of giving yourself grace and asking yourself those self-reflection questions. That to me will help you manage conflict, whether at work, home, or somewhere in between.
Great. So if I could summarize that into, you kind of laid it out in 3 steps for us. So the first one is really start with reflection of yourself. Know what your triggers are. Know the conversation you're about to go into, why you're having it, what the goals are, all of those sort of things, and think about how you want it to go. And the second phase is in the conversation, approach it with curiosity. So curiosity is the main theme of that second phase, And a great way of doing that is asking follow up questions to help not only bring clarity for yourself, but also for the person that you're interacting with. And then the third part is post um, reflection afterwards. So after you've had the conflict or the conversation, think about what went well, what didn't go well. How could I do this better? And then follow up with the other person as needed. So I like that kind of 3 step framework as you're getting into it. As I think about that, I recognize you're not saying that our goal should be to avoid conflict. You're not even saying necessarily it's to minimize conflict. It's really figuring out how we can make conflict productive and helpful and fruitful. Is that what I'm hearing from you? Is that correct?
Exactly. And I so appreciate the recap because I feel like we have connected conflict to this negative experience, and it quite honestly can be such a beautiful thing. And when you connect conflict to learning, to growing, to active listening, it really opens the world up and it makes it this not so much a scary thing, but now it's an opportunity for you to continue to grow and to really lean into that version of yourself that you want to be.
And that should resonate with us, but we see that in other areas of our life. That's the whole concept of having a growth mindset. And obviously, if you want to get stronger, the way to do it is to keep lifting weights. It's not to avoid weights, it's to go lift weights and lift heavier weights, but also improve your recovery and do it smarter. And so I think conflict is the exact same way that we have to approach it, just with more intentionality than we do right now, because so much of it now is sort of haphazard and happenstance.
Absolutely. And if we're using the weight analogy, I mean, you think about after you increase your set, right? You might be a little sore and you might be tired, but you know that that's such a good feeling that you did something. And so after a conversation, you might feel tired or you might feel really emotional, and that is your body's way of letting you know you did something big here. And
Mhm.
and it's really in my mind giving you kudos, like congratulations, so proud of you. Now let's
Mhm.
take this and prepare for the next conversation. And what's funny about that, as you mentioned, not avoiding conflict, the more you face it with curiosity and courage, it really can minimize the occurrences in the future because you have those guiding principles of you having common goals with the other party. You can truly engage in those conversations and not feel like you're having an argument. You're feeling like you're having a spirited conversation or even a spirited debate. The elements of respect, integrity, excellence, all of those are there.
Mhm. And we talked about how the goal is not to eliminate conflict, but to make it valuable, useful, and fruitful. And I'll also to if we're going to stick with our weight analogy, you're going to mess it up at some point. And just like with weight training or athletics, injuries are going to happen. And you're going to make a mistake and say, "Oh, that was too much. I went too far. I shouldn't have done that. Now my shoulder's killing me." Okay, that's a problem. When that happens, pause, stop, reflect, fix it, do what you have to do to get, but learn from the experience. It may take, maybe now you got to take a little time out of the gym and you got to do some rehab and you got to regroup. But that's a normal expectation. Like people realize, okay, when I play sports, there's a chance I'm going to get injured. That's a normal expectation. It should be the same thing when you're navigating conflict. It's like, okay, number one, I expect that there's going to be some conflict in my life. Number two, I expect I'm not going to get this right all the time, and I'm probably going to blow it at some point. But when I do, I need to not run from that, but lean into it and say, okay, all right, I messed that up. Here are the ways I think I messed it up. I'm sorry to I recognize that I messed it up. I didn't that was not my intention. Use that as a growth moment as well. So don't expect perfection. Lean into it when you blow it.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I recently got into calisthenics bars. I'm trying to just do different types of workouts, and I've been starting small, and I need a strap to just kind of help right now with that support, and those small wins have really helped me to boost my confidence. And so I think it's the same thing here, considering those small wins with the conversations, just even engaging in the conversation, even if it doesn't end exactly how you hope, to me is a win that deserves to be celebrated.
Good. So you've given us a good framework for how to think about and approach this. We've talked about appropriate expectations for conflict and that you shouldn't expect zero conflict, but you should try to make it helpful. You are going to mess it up. Any other practical tips that somebody can take into either meeting or discussion that they anticipate is going to be hot or contentious or full of conflict? What are some small little things that they can keep at the top of their mind?
Sometimes I think we feel that there's shame when you need to raise your hand and say, "Can I have a moment?" There's a lot of power in that pause, and so as you're engaging that in the conversation, and if you're like me and you tend to cry when you get angry, and now you're upset because you're crying, so now the mental clarity is lost, right? And you're unable to really put your words together. Sometimes just taking that moment to step back and let the other party know, hey, I want to continue this conversation, but can we take a breather? It can truly really make a better experience. And I think for so many of us, especially at work, if you're in a remote environment, it's okay to say, "Hey, can I place myself on mute and stop my camera for a moment just so I can collect myself and then come back renewed and refreshed?" Giving yourself that permission that it's not a sign of failure. We're not entering this conversation as win or lose, so you're not losing the conversation if you need to take that moment to pause, especially if you feel like your triggers are being activated. And during that pause, you can take a moment to take some deep breaths, as well as perhaps ask yourself, what am I feeling in this moment? What would I rather be feeling in this moment? So that you can quickly redirect yourself to get back into the conversation. So I would say that that's a big piece. And then also just recognizing that if even if you're ready to have the difficult conversation, if the other party is not there yet, and if the opportunity is appropriate, I would say grace is going to be so important, and that it's okay to perhaps use that extra time to align on when you both will feel comfortable entering the conversation, and use that time that you have back to continue to have that self-reflection. And that if you in the conversation or the resolution is not quite what you hoped, it's still a win because you were able to voice your concerns, voice your opinion. You learned about the other person. And so that in itself, sometimes the process is the win, rather than the resolution being exactly what you hope for. So I think managing the expectations in that regard is so key.
And I think oftentimes doing that before the conversation even starts, which gets back to your point earlier about you've got to do some self reflection. Say, okay, what are my goals here? What do I think this is about? What am I hoping to accomplish in this conversation today beforehand? And then start the conversation out and say, all right, here's what I'm thinking. This is where my head's at. This is what I would like to accomplish in the next 5 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, whatever. And that is great. You're putting yourself out there, and then that gives the other person a chance to say, "Oh, okay, we're aligned. I have the same goal. Let's get there." Or they may say, "Oh, that's we're not ready for that. I'm not ready for that yet." So, even if that's the case, now you've outlined it ahead of time and they know where they need to get eventually. You know that they're not ready. And then you say, "Okay, what do I need to do to help you get there? What questions do you have before you're ready for that?" So I think doing that really sort of sets the terms of the discussion. It helps you get on the same page. You have reflected on yourself, but then you also need to understand what that other person has reflected, understand their values, and then get alignment. So I think doing that self reflection and then calling that out at the beginning of the conversation can be really helpful. I've also found too, there are certain times where a discussion is just going to be challenging and there's no way around it and you can't sugarcoat it. And oftentimes going into the whether this is somebody who's maybe getting fired or there's a major behavioral professionalism lapse or something, and you just know it's going to be challenging. Oftentimes, I think it's really helpful to just say, "Hey, this is going to be a very challenging discussion. We're going to be very uncomfortable for the next 20 minutes, but know that I believe in you or support you, and I want to help you come out of this well. Here we go." So sometimes even just something like that can kind of help set the tone and people, can get on the same page. So I think some of those things can be helpful as well.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, I think you outlined the guiding principles perfectly. So having those guiding principles going into a conversation really does help setting that those expectations, and it could even include I know we have a history of yelling and really losing ourselves when we go into our conversations. What can we do if we feel like we're getting to that point? Or what's a signal we can do in order to take that moment to pause? It really can make a big difference. And something that you just did that sparked a thought that I use as a tip when I'm having a conversation where I really need to lean in as an active listener is using those maximizers rather than minimizers. So what you said that I heard was very, this is going to be very uncomfortable. Sometimes when people hear those maximizers, it truly helps them feel validated and seen, as opposed to the minimizers, which would have been, so you're going to feel a little uncomfortable, or this is just going to be a quick conversation about. Even as I was saying it out
Mm,
loud, you can understand how the other person may feel that you're minimizing their experience or even tiptoeing into the realm of gaslighting. So
mm.
just a little trick, if you really want to lean into active listening, maximizers are a huge help. I would avoid the minimizers if you can.
That's great. I think particularly for the negative things, if you set the tone, this is gonna be very uncomfortable. And then if you have the conversation and it turns out not to be that bad, you're gonna say, "Oh, that went better than I thought." Rather than if you start out saying, "This may be a little awkward," and then it is incredibly awkward, you're like, "Well, that was terrible." And so setting that expectation, like we talked about earlier, I think is really, really critical. Great. Well, Erica, thank you so much for walking us through this. I'm going to take a minute to kind of summarize my thoughts. I've been taking notes as we went through everything. So I'll do that, and then I'll give you a chance to run through the three big questions again for us. So for me, the things I wrote down, conflict you define really well. Anytime two or more parties are gathered, there's potential for misalignment, typically over needs, values, or goals. There are different types of conflicts over different reasons. It's important to understand those because that's going to impact how we treat it. We are similar people, whether we're at home or we're at work, but ourselves, our true selves, come out in different ways based on the culture and environment. So we have to be aware of those different states. We have to be aware of the psychological safety, try to maximize it, but then don't take advantage of that and abuse the people who love you the most because you know they're willing to stick with you. We talked about some of the negative consequences of burnout, of conflict being increased burnout, decreased joy, lower performance, health issues, lower confidence, and then a lot of missed opportunities in unresolved conflict. But it can be productive in situations where there is high psychological safety. When you reach resolution, when conflict is seen as a growth opportunity, there's respect between the parties, you have aligned guiding principles and shared goals. And then ultimately, in terms of expectations, you told us that we should not expect a conflict free life. In fact, we need conflict in our lives to grow. And honestly, we don't appreciate not having conflict unless we have had conflict. So you have to take the good with the bad. So we need to realign our expectations. And rather than trying to get rid of conflict, we need to figure out how to turn it into productive conflict. And you gave us a great framework on and sort of a three-step approach on how to do that with starting by reflecting on yourself beforehand, second, approaching the conversation with curiosity, asking questions, and third, doing some follow-up reflection as well. So that it was a tremendous summary. Now I'll give you a chance to summarize. We'll re-ask the three big questions and let you give us kind of rapid fire answers here. So, what is conflict and what is its impact?
Conflict essentially is what happens when your needs are not being met and you feel that there's another party that may be impacting those needs. And the impact of not resolving that conflict is it can weigh on you, it can lead to the relationship being strained, and it truly can clip your wings when you think about opportunities for you to grow and to expand in how you communicate with others and what you can learn about yourself.
Great. Our second big question: why do we find ourselves in conflict so often, and why is it hard for us?
We're human. And I think giving ourselves grace is something that we sometimes forget to do. And so everyone has a past, everyone has a worldview and experiences that make up who they are as a person beyond what we see on the surface. And so sometimes we enter conflict and it becomes a part of a pattern, quite honestly, because we have yet to really strengthen our muscles that can help us navigate conflict in a way that's productive and in a way that both parties can feel like they're heard by the end of the conversation.
Good. And our last one: what can we do to turn conflict into progress at work and in our everyday personal relationships?
Reflect, self-reflect before the conversation, lean into the conversation with curiosity and grace, and then take time after the conversation to pat yourself on the back, be your own champion that you encountered something with courage and curiosity, and also reflect on what you can do differently the next time. So just continuing to strengthen that muscle.
It's a great three-step process, and that actually leads us into our challenge or our action item for this. So I always like to challenge people to actually do something about the stuff we're talking about. And in this one, I want to use that three-step construct that you did, and I'm actually going to put a little twist on it. I'm going to have people start with step three because you may not be ready to prepare for a future conflict, but you almost certainly remember a past one. Probably that happened earlier today, if you're honest with yourself, or yesterday, the day before. So, my challenge for everybody today is think about the last conflict you had that either went well or not well, and do step three. So, do that post conversation, self reflection, and analysis that Erica talked about, and ask yourself, all right, what went well in that? What didn't go well? Where was I misaligned? Why did I accomplish my goal or not accomplish my goal? And then use that information to start back at the top at step number one for your next conflict that you're preparing for. So that's our challenge. Erica, thank you so much for joining us. Our topic today was managing conflict, sorting facts and feelings to turn disputes into progress. We really appreciate you having us. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
It was an honor and privilege. Thank you so much for the conversation, and this really energized me, so I really appreciate it.
Good. This one was a lot of fun. Usually talking about conflict's not fun, but I actually enjoyed this one quite a bit. So to our audience, thank you for joining us. As always, remember to live intentionally, consistently better. Keep striving to be the best human you can be so you can give your gifts back to the world, and never stop optimizing. Thanks for listening to the Mayo Clinic Human Optimization Project. If you like this episode, hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps others find us. Know someone who might benefit? Share the episode with them to join us in our mission to help as many people as possible become the best humans they can be. Have feedback or a topic idea? Email us at optimize@mayo.edu. And be sure to look for us on Instagram, X, and YouTube.
This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be relied upon for medical, professional, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified professional for any questions. The appearance of any guest does not imply an endorsement of them, their employer, or any entity they represent. The views and opinions expressed by the guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Mayo Clinic. Reference to any product, service, or entity is for informational purposes only and does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Mayo Clinic.